Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The CINIKRADIO podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio podcast. Here your host, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Igrihe.
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
And this is episode 131 of the Cinik Radio podcast, and I'm your Peloton-addicted host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, my team of opinionated badasses, Igrihe, Ryan, and Kim. And on this week's show, we have some listener mail for you, some strange news, and we are breaking down episode 6 of The Mandalorian, entitled The Prisoner. All that and more, and it starts now. All right, folks, you asked for it. It's back. Let's do some listener mail. And we got one for Ryan. Edwin from Long Beach, California wants to know, hey guys, I love the show, and I've listened for quite some time now, and Ryan has brought up a show called The Expanse, which I love very much, several times. I just finished season 4, and I was wondering, Ryan, what did you think about it, and do you think there'll be a season 5?
It is great, but actually, like I kind of like with The Mandalorian, I kind of like not. Part of it was intentional. Like I like watching one episode at a time and like letting that digest. So I kind of don't want to binge it, but I'll give you an answer. All right. So the Expanse is, if not the best show on TV, it's one of the best shows on TV. And it has been for a long time. The first 3 seasons were incredible. It's a bit of a slow burn, but it really is one of the most intelligent shows on TV. Really does great stuff with the science. It's really well written. The effects are amazing, especially considering the budget. And so, it was hopeful for season 4 with Amazon taking over, and they have not let me down. It is as good as any of the previous seasons, if not better. I think the difference with this show is it steps away from the space setting, which is a little jarring at first, not to give away too much of what goes on. But I really love that, having read the books, it sticks to the books really well, but it's just great. So I would love it if we covered The Expanse, because it really is one of the best shows on TV. But yeah, to answer the question, I love the season. I love that there are more people watching it, because it really is one of the best things out there.
Great answer, Ryan. Kai from Portland wants to know, IG, do you have your Rise of Skywalker tickets already? And what format will you be seeing it in? And also, are you camping outside any theaters?
All right. Yes, I have my tickets, which means I don't have to camp outside a theater because I know what time I'll be seeing it. Unfortunately, I have to see it basically at 1 o'clock in the morning because that's what works with my schedule right now. So Thursday night into Friday morning when I'm going to see it's going to be a little bit kind of stressful because I'm going to try and run home from work, take a little bit of a nap, get up, go watch Star Wars, and then get up the next morning and go back to work. But it's Star Wars. I've seen every Star Wars since the original A New Hope in the theater on opening day, and I'm not breaking that tradition now. I'm not seeing it in 3D. It's going to be a large format screen, but in a theater called Alamo Draft House. So there'll be food and drinks and things like that, but I'll not be drinking because it might dull my senses to everything that's going on. I'm hugely excited. I know this is the end of the Skywalker saga, but I'm hoping that it will do well enough and be good enough that we get more Star Wars content, at least on the big screen, for years to come. I'm excited. I'm just ecstatic that this is coming. Everything looks good with it. And I think JJ did a great job with The Force Awakens. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Kim Ashley from Lodi, New Jersey wants to know if you're actually seeing Alanis Morissette, or were we joking, her 25th anniversary Jagged Little tour, and what songs would you be looking forward to the most?
Yes, we are going to Tampa to see her, and that was like my favorite CD when it came back out back in the 90s. I listened to it until it didn't work no more and it was riddled with scratches and I had to buy a new one. So You Oughta Know is my absolute jam, and I will be that 36-year-old that is obnoxiously screaming at the top of her lungs at the concert.
Now, would you be disappointed if she just stuck to that CD and did none of her other hits, or would you be okay if she just did the whole CD straight through?
I'd be totally fine with that.
Makes sense. All right, and lastly, I got a text from my coworker that said, "Hey, Cinik, could you stop talking about the Baby Yoda to everyone that walks in the break room? And you forgot to sign out. Sincerely, everybody you work with." Listen, that's a hard no, because I'm going to talk to Baby Yoda about anybody that'll listen. And could you help a brother out and maybe sign me out for me? My coworkers absolutely love me. All right, guys, the season is winding down. Only 2 episodes left in the chamber. We get to episode 6, The Prisoner, which brings the Mandalorian in touch with some old friends and some new enemies on a rescue mission that is just cameo filled. Will the plot save the day? Let's find out. Ryan, is it possible to have any more cameos in one episode? Some highly recognizable people like Mark Boone Jr. from Sons and the amazing Bill Burr, and some not recognizable like Natalia Teen from Game of Thrones and Clancy Brown, mostly notable from Shawshank Redemption. Which cameos worked for you and which didn't?
They all worked. No, absolutely every single one of them worked brilliantly. I love Bill Burr as a comedian, and he was very much Bill Burr. It wasn't like he was acting so much as just being Bill Burr. But I thought he was great, and he was kind of he pulled off like the sniper. He was I would be curious because the comedy's kind of cheesy. Some of it. Part of me was wondering like how much did he kind of change any lines? Was there anything that was ad-libbed, or was he just kind of muttering to himself, "Wow, they think this is funny, this is ridiculous"? But whatever the case is, I loved his performance. I also loved Natalia Tena from Game of Thrones. It took me a while to realize that it was her, but she was chewing up scenery. It was great, with her character, and just I loved her performance and how just weird she was. Clearly she was having the time of her life, and I really loved the cameo at the very end of it. But I don't know if we're supposed to talk about the very end. But I love the cameo with the directors as well. So yeah, they all worked for me, and maybe my favorite was Bill Burr, just because I'm a big fan of Bill Burr.
How about you, Kim?
Natalia Tena, is it me or did her character look an awful lot like Plava Laguna from Fifth Element, except just a little purple? I felt like her character was so bizarre, and just you could tell that she was having a whole lot of fun with it. I've never been a huge Bill Burr fan. I've always kind of not really found him funny, but for his character and the way that he is naturally and just like his mannerisms and whatnot, I felt like it really worked for this particular character. Like he kind of found the part that works for him, and it's outside of that whole comedic realm. So I was really happy to see that.
They were all great cameos, but my favorite probably was Richard Adeoye. He was from a British TV show called The IT Crowd. It's available on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's hilarious. And us being geeks, it really kind of fits right into our scheme. Their biggest joke on there that revolves every time the IT department gets called, they're like, "Have you tried turning it off and back on again?" But he's playing Zero the droid. And it's just, I think that droid is one of the funniest droids that has ever been in a Star Wars thing. He's like cocky and like thinks he's smarter and faster and does everything better. And I just love how it was played. I mean, in a show full of cameos, that cameo, like just being able to hear his voice a little bit and like it sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. So I had to go look it up afterwards. And I was like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that guy. He's hilarious." But there's just so many cameos in this, including the one live person on the ship. I loved all of it. Thought it was great.
Yeah, he was actually the voice of a lot of characters on Clone Wars, and he played Anakin in Clone Wars, so I thought that was kind of cool. Richard Adeoye, actually, movie-wise, is probably most famous for the Ben Stiller movie The Watch, which he was absolutely hilarious in that movie. For me, I thought Bill Burr worked a lot, but I'm probably impartial when it comes to him. The one that I didn't like was Mark Boone Jr. he took me out of it. He's too recognizable. They didn't do anything to make him look any different than he did from Sons or any of the other appearances. It seems like he was also he appeared on a couple episodes of The Last Man on Earth, and he's just the same guy in every single scene that he's ever in. And to me, it just was a little off-putting in a space setting to see one of the Sons of Anarchies just kind of hanging out there.
I have a theory about that.
Go ahead. We got the time.
If you notice that there was not just a lot of cameos that were in the episode, but there was a lot of homage being paid to really popular sci-fi movies. Like I mentioned just a little bit ago with the Plava Laguna looking character, played by Natalia Tena. Amy Sedaris, I know we're not on that, but Amy Sedaris' character looked an awful lot like Ripley from Aliens. So you've got Fifth Element, you've got your aliens. There was also the Men in Black 2 with the Bill Burr's character when he has the little gun that pops up over his shoulder and is kind of like looking around and shooting off at the mouth. Mark Boone's character to me reminded me of Ego from Guardians. The two-tone of the beard and the long hair and the way that the uniform and everything was kind of set up. And to me, I was like, well, these are some of the most popular movies of all time. And they're kind of giving like a little bit of a nod to it in the episode. So I just thought that was really great.
Interesting. Well, speaking of the team in general, they were a group of scoundrels, and Mando just kind of teams up with them, just trusts them. To you, Kim, was it not a question of if they were going to double cross them, but when?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I didn't trust any of them. Right off the bat, I was like, the fuck is he doing? He had his motives, and when his Natalia Tena's character comes up to, God, I can't remember the name of the character, sorry. But when she comes up to him and she kind of gets in his face and whispers something to him, like, I know who you are. This is the way, blah, blah, blah. I feel like, she also says, you've gotten soft. Your years of going rogue has made you soft. And I thought, well, duh, he's letting his guard down entirely. Why are you sitting there trusting these people? Like, the red flags are going off all over the place. So I'm sure that this is like a larger buildup for dramatic consequence for later in the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, it just surprises me as a character that's out there in the universe and he's got to expect anything. Ryan, does it seem like he expects nothing ever?
Either he's just really naive, or, which is another problem, maybe he's just hubris. Like, he just is like, look, I know they're going to double cross me and I'll figure a way out. And, for what it's worth, he does. I mean, he's been in almost every episode, he's in an unwinnable situation and he finds a way out. So it, I'd like to think it's more hubris and more just being resigned to the fact that, like, he needs money. He needs jobs, and what else is he going to do? He's got to figure it out, and he'll just rely on his own wit and luck and his own abilities to get out of these situations.
IG, when the Mandalorian started getting his armor, we talked about it being really video game like upgrades. For us gamers, did it feel like kind of an old-fashioned 5-man dungeon run like you would get in World of Warcraft or Star Wars Old Republic?
It felt a lot like that, except it felt like a 5-man dungeon run where the healer is inept and the tank can't hold threat, and the DPS is key binding turning, right? They're turning with their keyboard instead of their mouse. They're targeting the wrong things. One guy's off collecting quest items while you're trying to fight the boss. There was a lot of problems, and Mando should have dropped group real quick and found another dungeon to run, because these guys, I know they had their plan, and their plan was to double cross, but man, like, shouldn't you at that point then just let the droids go off and kill them and go get your bounty and get some money and move on?
It brought up a question to me about character, Ryan. I mean, was this sort of out of character for him? The first episode, he wouldn't even get in a land speeder with a droid. In this episode, we allow not only the droid to be the pilot, but you leave him with all your worldly possessions.
He does seem like a pushover in some of these situations where you just kind of like, he puts up a little fight, but then he just goes with it. It's weird. I don't know. It's not really out of character, because it's not the first time that he, like, think about it, in episode 4, he's like, no, I'm not going after that ATST, and they convince him otherwise. Episode 5, he's like, I'm not going to hunt down, one of the most lethal killers in the galaxy. And then he ends up going, and, even this time, I'm not using my ship, and he goes along with it and even allows the droid. So kind of is in character that he seems to be pretty easy to persuade. So, I was, I kind of believed it because just that's how he seems to make his decisions.
Kim, when the hunter becomes the hunted, we get a short but exciting exchange between the big red Devorian and Berg. What did you think of the fight? Were you kind of let down by the fact that the other showdowns were kind of cut short? Would you like to see more of that? Could that have chewed up more of the episode? I feel like they really should have elaborated on it more. When you watch these kind of movies, you're watching it for excitement. And, when the series first started, I was like all gun ho. I've been waiting, so freaking long for this to happen. And I feel like as the episodes have gone on, they've kind of waned off a little bit. And I don't feel like it's been as exciting as when it first came out. So that's a little disappointing to me. So I'm hoping that it's just, like the calm before the storm. It's going to end on a bang with the last couple of episodes. But I really wish they would have, spent a little bit more time of, showing us all of those special effects that they spent millions of dollars to produce in each episode.
I disagree a little bit in that I like the direction and how they chose to go about, showing us what they showed us. Like a lot of this played like a horror movie. And so, and with horror movies, a lot of it, a lot of times at its best, they're kind of, it's what's left to your imagination and you don't really see everything. And in this case, I think it worked in two ways. Obviously, we see how lethal he is, the Mando, in a number of situations throughout against droids. And, we needed to see him in Berg because Berg is bigger, stronger. And so we needed to see that fight. But, really with Bill Burr, with Mayfield, we don't really need to see that fight. The same thing with Xi'an. Like, we don't really need to see that fight. And I think it works well because we get that scene at the end where we kind of thought they were all dead, and no, they're not. So maybe, he'll encounter them again. So I kind of like that this episode really leaves a lot to your imagination. And I just don't think that we would have gotten much. Again, a fight in him and Bill Burr is not fair. Like, what's going to happen, and again, the same thing with Xi'an. So I kind of like that we got a lot with Berg, but that was all we really needed one-on-one for him. And again, he did some amazing stuff against those droids. So I kind of liked watching that. He just looked like a brutal, huge badass.
And I want to know, just as we're talking about Berg here, what is the Mandalorian's fascination with messing people up with doors? Like everywhere he goes, like if he can mess you up with a door, like, is he like, I don't know if anybody else played the Friday the 13th video game where you could crush somebody's head with a door as one of the kills. But it seems like Mandalorian looks for opportunities to smush people in a door.
Well, I thought that was a great callback to the first episode when he did that in the fight in the cantina. However, IG, since I'll throw it to you since you brought it up, are we seeing the Disney influence within the series? Because he should have been either decapitated or crushed by that second door closing on him, and he wasn't. We ended up with the cell with the rest of them. So do you think that's a little Disney magic there?
I think it might be a little Disney magic, or like somehow there's something about this race that we don't know, where those horns are really tough. And they did break. Like, his horns were broken when he was in that cell at the end. But yeah, Disney doesn't want to kill everybody off. And plus, if you kill him off, you can't put him in anything later. And I think some of these people they're going to want to bring back in consecutive seasons or further along in the story. Because while he's running his missions and doing his stuff and progressing through the story, he's making some enemies. And sometimes having those enemies circle back around later kind of makes for interesting storytelling.
I think that more than like it's being Disneyfied or sanitized. Cause like at the end of the day, like he burned a stormtrooper alive, he he's impaled people, he's chopped people, so I feel like Disney won't shy away from the kills. They may shy away from visually seeing it, but they haven't shied away from some brutal kills throughout this show. So I think that would be more a situation of, here are some interesting characters, and for season 2 might be a fun little thing. Maybe he's got to re-team up with them or they go after him or something. So I think it's more that than it would be like, we don't want to see a brutal kill in this situation.
Well, Kim, another week, another near miss for our little green friend. Or can we just get a week where maybe the Mando gets him a sitter and the little guy isn't getting dropped or kicked across or hunted by a robot? And did it seem like he was about to force deflect Zero's blaster shot before the Mando made the save?
Damn it. I love that little green dude so much. I really was hoping I would be bored of him by now. So to answer your first part, I kind of felt like he did have a little bit of a sitter with Amy Sedaris' character. He was able to go off on a little bit of a mission and come back. Yeah, so he looks at his little hand like, I did this. Like there was that moment of excitement on his face, and then the guy falls to the ground and it was actually Mando, and I was so bummed because I thought this was a growth opportunity type of moment for this little guy.
Do you get the sense, Kim, that he knows, like he's a lot less of an infant than we figure? And maybe he isn't as powerful as he could be, but he knows a lot more that's going on. Like he's not infant-like in the brain.
Oh, for sure. I feel like he's way older than we're probably giving him credit for. I also feel like he's very much aware of what the situation is, and he knows the mindset, or he knows how to mentally manipulate people so that he himself is safe. Like he's cute. So, if he acts cute, people won't think that he's a threat or anything like that, but nobody knows that he has this, Jedi force, or that he has this ability to destroy them if he damn well wanted to. So, he's a dangerous little guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just get the sense by the mannerisms and the eyes and even the way that he played with the robot that there's a lot more going on in his mind than we realize, that he may not be able to audibly communicate. There's intelligence there that we don't quite understand yet. Ryan, when a double cross becomes a triple cross, the Mando takes the assault tracker and leaves it on the platform. Compared to what happened to Raznar and Quinn, did the others get off easy by being left on the prisoner ship?
Yeah, I guess so. That was one of the, and I guess, in that situation, the least memorable characters for the episode were the ones that died, and the ones that were more memorable and I'd like to see survive. So in that way, it kind of worked out well, because I'm glad it worked out that way and not the other way around.
The debate has been going on all week about the show, that it's too episodic, and some people think the plot needs to be more serialized. Where do you land on that topic? Your final thoughts and rating for the episode?
Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like in the beginning of the series, I was very much drawn into it, and I was alert and aware of the storyline, and I was like here for this. And as it's kind of gone on, I feel like it's just been very slow moving. I know a lot has happened, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, the storyline of its own hasn't necessarily progressed yet. And I'm not quite sure in which direction or what the end result is going to be at the end of this season, or where they intend on taking it in the future. So I kind of feel a little bit lost, like maybe there's a lack of direction to it. But that being said, I do love the series, and I'm being overly critical about it because I am a huge Star Wars fan. So I'm a little bit biased on that front. For this episode, I give it an 8. I really did enjoy it. I felt like there was a couple of things that, if, as a fan, I would have liked to have seen different. But all in all, it's just such a great series, and I'm really having to grasp at straws in order to find anything to complain about.
I'm going to play Cinik for a minute and ask a question for everybody, then I'll give my thoughts. There were a bunch of jokes and lines in the show, but there were 3 really meta lines that I want to know what you guys think, if they were too meta and too much, or if you actually found them funny, or what you thought. So there was wasn't a stormtrooper smartass, which I marked out at, but again, it's like a little meta when he mentioned that the ship looks like a Canto Bight slot machine, and then the Gungan joke. So did you guys feel it was too meta, or did it work? Did those jokes work for you? Did some work? Did some not?
I'll take that one. I believe the slot machine was too meta. The other two I had really no problem with, because I think just about any Star Wars fan would have picked that up.
Yeah, and I'm right on board. The Gungan thing was funny because obviously there's no way. So like poking fun at somebody, I mean, who doesn't call each other names? And that's a normal thing. And Jar Jar, even for non-Star Wars fans, is a big enough disappointment to most people that they get the reference. The stormtroopers not being able to hit the broadside of a barn, another good reference that everybody knows. Yeah. So I think those two are great, but the Canto Bight thing, like, you really got to be into it to get. So it's too meta, it's too much. And especially with what they're doing with this show in particular, it's a problem. Like, you can't go that deep and get somebody to understand. Like, it's just too much. You can't go that far. And especially in The Last Jedi, the part of the movie that is most useless is the Canto Bight stuff. So, I mean, I guess it's a way to use it to reference it back now, but it's too much.
I have to agree with you. At first, it kind of flew over even my head, and it was my husband that pointed it out to me, like, did you hear that? And we actually went back and rewinded it and jotted my notes down. This is supposed to be a show that's appealing to an entire new generation of fans. These are people that may not necessarily know the entire backstory just yet, and so they may not make that connection to it. They may not find it funny unless it was intentionally just put in there for, the mid to older audiences who, may have picked up on the concept of it, but a bit too meta.
We all thought it was gonna be a space western, and that would be kind of the the bounty of the week, and then we got Baby Yoda, and that changed everything. I like that they found a good balance. Like, it really hasn't been serialized, and I'm sure that the next 2 episodes are going to come back to that main story. But this is kind of what we wanted. We wanted, it's not quite the bounty of the week, but it's kind of it's Mandalorian, working with some cameo, some guest star to do something. And I kind of like that. And I don't know that if it was a more serialized type of story, if we would have gotten the different guest stars, because he's in almost every scene, and because it's so centered around him, it's not like we can go back and forth between like different groups or different characters or different stories and see how they all come together. It's really just following him. So because he's going from one mission to the next, we do get these interesting cameos, and we get to go to these interesting spaces. And so I really like that aspect of the show, and I don't know that we would get it if it was as serialized. And I think I'm serialized out. Like, I've been in the chat, I've been telling you guys how great Watchmen is, and to use that as an example, Watchmen is an example to me of like prestige TV done perfectly. And this, I love this show, and I love it in a lot of ways as much as Watchmen, but it's not prestige TV in that way. And because it's not trying to be that, I don't think it has to be serialized, because I feel like with a lot of the prestige shows, they have to be serialized, and they have to try to throw you off the scent and be all over the place. And this doesn't have to do that. It can just be a fun show. And it can, at times it can be irreverent, at times it can be, like what I loved about this episode in particular was that it felt like a heist movie mixed with a horror movie, and the way it was shot. And the way some of the it was weird, because in a lot of the scenes, like Mando, who was our protagonist, is the scary villain, and some of the ways that they shot it really, like, you change the music a little bit and change the setting, and he is this scary villain who's killing droids and capturing people, and it was really, really well done. So it might be my favorite episode of the show so far. I just really loved, I think the cameos were all great. I loved all the characters to the point where I'm glad that they all survived, because I want to see them interact with him again. I thought it was great. Yeah, I thought it was funny. Some of the lines were a little too meta, but the delivery was still really good. And I just can't say enough about how well it was shot. And again, that it just gave me that feel of like a, team up, but then, it veered into horror with the way, the music was done really well. Cinematography was great. I love the episode. So I will give it a 9.5.
So yes, serialized versus episodic. I mean, there's a nice mix between the two going on, because there is some carry on from episode to episode. I liked at the very end when he was leaving that space station as the X-Wings were coming in to blow him up, that he looked back at Baby Yoda and said, "See, I told you it'd be a bad idea." I think that they're communicating more, like Baby Yoda maybe doesn't speak, but he does, like through the Force or something gets into his head. And that kind of shows that, like, they're in this together. They're moving along together. And that's what I caught out of the end of it. And it just, everything kind of pieces together. Now, it's not serialized, kind of like Game of Thrones was, where everything just kind of continued and continued and continued. But there is a thread still continuing through the whole thing with little side adventures. Kind of like Supernatural, but not that bad as far as things go, because Supernatural's really gotten off the rails. I do like the episode, though. A lot of great cameos. Seeing 3 of the directors flying X-Wings just kind of made me all kinds of excited. Seeing Matt Lanter playing the guy in the ship that's only supposed to be droids got me all kinds of excited. Just all kinds of different things. Even the uniform that he was wearing and the Deveronian, all those callbacks to old Star Wars and everything, just it just gives me warm feels, fuzzies, and goosebumps. So this episode was a lot of fun. It was really kind of cool. I liked the little horror aspect in it with the light kind of flashing behind, especially Mayfeld's stuff when the Mandalorian kept getting closer and closer in between each blink. And then all of a sudden he was on the other side of him. Man, talk about a horror trope that just played out perfectly again. Really well done, beautifully shot. CGI is great. And I don't have any complaints about the episode. It's not the best episode of the season, but it is a solid episode. So I'm going to give it an 8.5.
The whole debate between episodic and serialized really kind of drove me crazy this week. The show is what it is. It's what the directors and the writers and Disney chose it to be. Now, if maybe it'd be a little slightly more serialized if they spent a few seconds at the end of every episode setting up the next episode so we know where we're headed, we know where we're going. Sometimes it just feels like we appear somewhere for no rhyme, no reason, but this is what we're doing this week. It has kept the show kind of fresh, but it also makes it feel slightly disjointed. The Prisoner was a solid show for me from start to finish. It just felt rushed, with zero context, like them referring to the good old days, but then giving us really nothing to sell it with other than just talking about the good old days. I loved Bill Burr's character, and I really thought we could have done more with him. I'm a Suns fan, but Mark Boone Jr. just was a distraction to me, too recognizable. Just give him a uniform, give him a hat, something to make him somebody else. The rest of the crew was well-rounded and a bunch of scoundrels, and I kind of like that. I didn't love the episode, but I liked it a lot, and I'll give it an 8. Next week, we're taking a step away from The Mandalorian for a week because Friday marks the end of the saga, and we will be reviewing The Rise of Skywalker, and we will be back the following week with episode 7 and 8 of The Mandalorian and wrap the season up. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan, my friends. May the Force be with you all. IG, let's do a little news.
Well, let's. And because it is always the best thing to do, and because it is always the most fun place to go, let's go to Florida. Because Florida is just the bane of all existence for humankind. It is where all the trash goes, and it's where all the best news stories come from. And this first one is amazing, right? There's a Florida man found partially eaten by an alligator, and the alligator died from a meth overdose. That's right, Polk County, Florida. Florida man found partially eaten by the alligator. Must have had a little bit of stuff in his pocket. Must have been hanging out with Jesse and Eisenberg.
Yeah, in his pocket.
A large, that dude was wearing some serious cargo pants, because that's a lot of meth to kill a alligator. That's a dinosaur, ladies and gentlemen. He killed a dinosaur with some meth. Like, where else have you ever heard about this kind of stuff happening? I mean, I guess on that episode of Dragnet, when they shoved the drugs down the snake's throat and made it eat it, maybe. But wow, we're killing dinosaurs with meth in Florida, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are.
Well, it just goes to show you that the meth is much more potent than it used to be in the prehistoric period. You know, that it could take a dinosaur out like that. It probably came from the same place. Remember, we did a story not too long ago where the guy claimed that the drugs flew into his car because he had his windows open. It probably flew into that alligator's mouth the same way. I don't understand what's going on with Florida, but I'm booking my ticket now because it sounds like a party. Kim, what's going on down there?
Don't ask me, please. I don't know anything about these weirdos. I'm in northern Florida. I try to stay away from them.
There's just flying bags of drugs down there, though. It's a party. Ryan, we booking a trip or what?
I don't know about that. I'm past that. Just like tame, honest fun.
All right, Captain America. IG, next story.
All right, our next story. You know, I'm going to be fair, Kim, and I'm coming up here to the Great White North, my hometown, where I'm living now, to St. Paul, Minnesota. It is Christmas time, ladies and gentlemen. It is the holidays, and people are buying stuff on Amazon left and right, packages being delivered to the house. And of course, with package deliveries, come package theft. And here we have the most polite package thief of all time. He went to this lady's house, stole her package, and left behind a thank you note. The note says, just a quick little thank you for leaving me the opportunity of stealing your package. Very nice of you. Thank you. Signed, the new owner of your package.
So, IG, what was in the box?
You don't want to know.
Show of hands, guys. How many people think IG's the porch pirate that sold that poor people's package? I know you.
Was
I know
it
you picked the story for a reason.
Well, I got to get notoriety somehow.
There is a great meme on the internet that if you want to get rid of your unwanted junk and you have no place to dump it, just put it in Amazon boxes and leave it on your porch, and eventually somebody will walk off with it.
Yep, but all that was in the box was a phone charger. It was a gift this lady was giving to her boss. But yeah, people will steal just about anything if it's in a box on your front step. But, Minnesota nice indeed.
Okay, Ryan, you're not down with the drugs, but what's the one thing that could be in an Amazon package that you may take it and walk off with it?
The look on his face is
I'm
like
actually trying to think about what would I
He is like, he's struggling.
Screen-worn Batman armor from Christian Bale.
Yeah, I would probably take that. But you wouldn't know that it was like, you wouldn't know what's in the box, right? But if I did, yeah, something like that, some kind of memorabilia or like prop or something that would get me. No, that's actually a really good one. A screen-worn Batman armor I'd probably take if I could.
Would you take selfies of it and send them to the people that you took the armor from?
No, and I wouldn't leave a thank you note either.
God.
See, that's the difference. Here in the Midwest, we're polite. We're going to steal your stuff, but we're going to say thank you for it in the meantime. All right, my next story comes from Arkansas. That's right. Back down toward the south. We're coming back for you, Kim. I swear to God. Anyway, in Arkansas, the Sherwood Police Department responded Monday night to report a burglar. At the scene, they found a smashed window and the owner's ex-husband holding a Dr. Pepper he'd taken from the fridge, according to the arrest report. Denisha Goodwin became angry and aggressive, then began to curse at officers as they approached the apartment. I think they wanted to take his Dr. Pepper.
I mean, if you're going to commit a felony, at least let the guy drink the drink, right? I understand breaking in and maybe stealing some shoes or some panties if that's your deal, but a soft drink? I mean, could he not go into the local store and got that? Or maybe it was her favorite and it was just all out of spite.
It's got 27
Really?
flavors.
Did that
yes,
happen?
It happened. 27 flavors.
That's
more than 13
Yeah,
herbs
but
and
it's
spices,
prune
right?
juice.
It's 27 flavors.
Yuck.
I would break into somebody's house for some KFC. And don't get me started on Popeyes. I may commit up to a Class C felony for some Popeyes.
Wow. I heard the Popeyes chicken sandwich wasn't even any good.
It's not anymore. They've changed it since they reissued it. It's much smaller, and it doesn't seem like they're making them fresh. They're making them all at the same time. But when it was first out, it was like the size of a full chicken, and it was just delicious.
It was great, yeah.
And yeah, they've scaled it back quite a bit.
Yeah,
When
they
you hear
created the
Ryan
hype.
say that something like Popeye's chicken was great,
Yeah,
it was great.
It
Like,
was.
Ryan doesn't eat that stuff, and Ryan
for fast
ate it.
food, it was really good. But I haven't tried it since. But it doesn't sound promising.
Oh no, it's a complete disappointment. They created this buzz, then they created the demand by not making enough of them, and then they reissue them and they're about half the size of what they were, and the quality isn't nearly as good. So thumbs down to you, Popeyes. Thumbs down indeed.
So our next story comes from Steuben County, Indiana. Troopers on an Indiana toll road there quickly figured out that something was wrong when they stopped to help a motorist who had a flat tire. First clue. License plate was on a piece of paper written on with crayon. That's right. Crayon license plate, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to try and run down Indiana toll roads with a crayon license plate. No idea if it's actually Crayola, which I think maybe then he might have gotten rid of, or if he forgot to stay within the lines. But yeah, crayon license plate.
Oh, it's probably another one of these sovereign geniuses. Nothing makes me happier than the sovereign citizens movement, just to see their side windows smashed out and dogs set upon them. They are some of the silliest people I've ever met in my whole life. I've got to buy car insurance. I've got to make sure my car's inspected and registered. But since some guy told you on the internet, usually YouTube, that you don't need to, all laws are out the window and we don't need to listen to police officers. I love those guys. I'm pretty sure that the whole sovereign citizens movement was made by window manufacturers, because that's how it always ends. It always ends with their windows blown out.
This one reminds me of also a recent story from up toward me, neighboring state of Wisconsin, where somebody made license plates out of a ham beer box. That's right. Yeah, they had like Ham's license plates they stuck on their car from a beer box. And I don't know what it is lately. Like, people don't understand what license plates are supposed to look like, or like that you need to have them. But yeah, it's it's getting a little out of hand, folks. Crayons, at least use a Sharpie. I mean, come on, get a little more creative than a crayon.
I had Ryan 3D print me one, so that way I don't need
exactly.
to pay for
I could
it.
do that. Like, go and do that at least. Or
I'm trying to get Ryan in every single crime in the world.
Well, we know what he's doing. That Batman outfit is more for crime than it is for doing other things.
I have not printed it, but I did download because like somebody, it was available, that whatever, the 3D printed gun that was all in the news like a few years ago. I have the file somewhere. I've never like that printed anything or like done it, but I have the file somewhere. I don't know what the laws are as far as like if you print it or make it, or like if it's legal to do that or not. But apparently, I'm probably on some like government list now.
Well, just call me when you get the 3D printed grappling gun. I'll be all about that. Right. I want one of those. I just want to scale up the side of buildings.
Yeah. Where does he get these wonderful toys?
I don't know that you'd want to use my 3D printed grappling gun. I would not trust that.
So my last story comes from the NFL, the No Fun League, the National Football League. And their attempt at having fun lately is that they plan to honor Michael Vick at the Pro Bowl. Michael Vick, convicted dogfighter who had a pretty good NFL career, had it interrupted by going to prison for 18 months, and then was gifted an NFL career after that. Meanwhile, Colin Kaepernick can't get on a field. He couldn't pay to get on the field. But there is a Change.org petition that has over 500,000 signatures already begging the NFL to not do this.
I'm mixed on, obviously I'm an animal lover. I have, a number of dogs, including one that's interrupted the show on a number of occasions. I think obviously what he did was abhorrent and horrible. That being said, I think, obviously he paid, to some extent, if we have a justice system, he did pay his debt. So, then you wonder, okay, well, what is he allowed to do or not allowed to do? Like, obviously, okay, he can have a career, he can do whatever, but should he be honored by the NFL, I guess, is the question. And, it's a tough spot because, he has been an advocate for, for awareness for, dogfighting, and it seems like he really has put genuine time and effort into it, and that he's changed his way. It's a tough spot, like with a situation like that, because then it's like brings up the question of like when do you ever get to truly rehabilitate yourself or redeem yourself? When can your crimes be forgiven? When, if that's the case? Again, I think in his case he's done a lot to try to redeem himself, but again, what he did was horrible. There's just so many questions, it's really hard to answer. Like, I feel like I'm kind of torn. Like, I think in his case he's done enough that I'm okay with the NFL doing it. I'm not going to freak out, but I would also be, perfectly fine if the NFL caves to the pressure. But you're right. At the same time, you have people like Colin Kaepernick who can't get a job, where he's being honored and, has, a sketchy and very, bad, sketchy past at best. But, again, as somebody who's been convicted of crimes, but the NFL it's weird because you have lots of people who seem to be able to, come back from, you have like Ray Lewis, who arguably probably committed murder, and he's one of the most lauded, people in the league. And you've got guys like Ben Roethlisberger, who's still, who's been accused of horrible things and is still playing. So, the NFL's weird when it comes to like, how they treat people and players who've done awful things. And so, yeah, it's a tough spot because I don't know, the NFL seems to never get it right or seems to not be able to figure out the right way to approach people with kind of PR problems like that.
I think it's more than just a PR problem. It's a freaking nightmare, especially if you're on this side of it. I mean, I don't agree with Kaepernick being banned from being able to get a job just because he had a personal preference on, taking a stand or whatnot. I don't agree with this Michael Vick thing. I mean, they've already ruled it that it's any kind of animal abuse and dogfighting is a felony in the United States. It's a federal thing now. It's gone up to the Supreme Court. They've made that mandate. They've made it law. He's not sorry. And he paid fines. He did a little time in jail, the minimum amount that he could get away with. And now he's just, I don't agree with it. It's a disgusting topic, and the things that he did to those animals was deplorable. So I don't care for this guy at all. I don't ever want to see him being represented in a position of being idolized or being put out there again as a role model for kids, because that's not a good example to be setting for them.
Well, my only problem with that, I guess, is the double standard that the NFL is holding, because the crime and the punishment are like miles apart. between him and Kaepernick, who's just the example I use. It was much more deplorable what Vic did versus what Kaepernick did. Meanwhile, Kaepernick is getting some money from like Nike and things like that, but he's not gotten the additional years of career that Vic got after prison. And that's where the disconnect comes. Like, it's okay. You paid your debt and then you got to come back and play football again. But now we need to honor you at a stage right before the Super Bowl that like everybody's going to be around to watch and there'll be celebrities and everything else. It seems a little far-fetched for the NFL to stand up and do that while these other things are still in the forefront.
Well, I agree, but at the same time, I believe Kaepernick kind of shot himself in the foot, but we won't get into all that. I mean, he had a way in, but he just didn't want to play the game, and I don't think that his protests are an issue anymore. I think it's more, can he be a team player? And then when you get the whole NFL to come watch you work out and you switch the venue a half hour before everybody's supposed to be there and you're supposed to start, you're basically telling the NFL, I don't want back in. I've also seen it compared to Pete Rose, completely different. Okay, what Michael Vick did was not just, it's subhuman. It was terrible. It was, and his redemption is he gets to spend the rest of his life making up for it, not to be honored. The NFL needs to cut ties with him. And I'm surprised that they would even touch the topic, seeing how fanatical pet ownership has become, where people now consider their pets their kids and they take them everywhere with them, much to my chagrin, because I don't think they belong in the Red Robin. But still, the guy tortured, killed, and destroyed dogs just for losing fights. I don't see a world where you could ever make up for that. And I'm not that big of an animal rights guy. I just don't think that it's forgivable. I don't think it's redeemable. And I don't think the NFL should do it.
And that's it. You made it to the end of another episode of the Cinik Radio podcast. I'm Igrihe, here with Cinik, who you can find at CINIKRADIO.com. Also, we had Ryan, who you can find at thejimwits.com. And Kim, who you can find at kmcartworks.com. Great artists. Go check out some really cool stuff. We'll be back next week with some new stuff for you. Probably some news as well. Send your crazy news stories, any comments, questions, and concerns to us at CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. Find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. And find us on Instagram at Cinik Radio. You can also head over to tpublic.com, search for Cinik, CINIK, and get your own Cinik Radio podcast gear. T-shirts, mugs, cups, stickers, all the cool Cinik Radio podcast stuff you could possibly want. It'd help the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for all the love and support. Keep listening, sharing it with your friends, like, listen, and subscribe. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.
I've seen one episode of season 4, so I haven't.
God damn you, Ryan! I put in the fucking chat. God damn you, Ryan! so just lie, you motherfucker! I'm not rewriting a question.
No, so
Wing it.
I've seen the first episode of season 4. You really want me to?
Just lie. Say you love it. Right. It'll be back. It's fucking great. Best thing I ever saw.
Oh, man.
How do you talk
Watchmen.
so much shit
came out this
about a show and watch one episode? Like, it's all... Yeah, and instead, let's go watch a Little Shop of Horrors.
Just say you started the season, but what you've seen so far, and what you've seen so far you love, and you're going to continue watching it, and you hope there's a season 5 based off the one episode I've watched.
You take that $250 ticket and give it to somebody else. I got to stay home and watch The Expanse. That would go over really well.
Fucking good. All right. You do too much shit, Ryan. You're doing too much. What the fuck, Ryan? Stay home once in a while.
Burn the candle at both ends and nick your
only
chin.
4 episodes into The Watchmen. None of you have watched The Expanse. Why are you getting on me? No. All right. Okay.